There are quite a few children from chaebol families at Korea University. Therefore, it is not uncommon to have a chaebol family among seniors and juniors in the same class. When I was a freshman, Go Junhyung was on a leave of absence. The first time we met was probably at a school festival. Then he said hello with Sienna. Hearing that he was a member of the GH group, I remember being amazed and envious. How many years ago was that? I saw the man sitting across from me. There is no change in the fact that he is the son of the president of GH Construction. If anything has changed, it will be mine. Contrary to me, who was absurd, Go Junhyung's expression was serious. And Taekyu, who was next to him, had a happy expression on his face. He looks like he was happy to be here. Why is this child so interested in other people's love affairs? I said calmly. I don't know what you think, but I have no feelings for Sienna. Still, as she was once close, I wish she had a better life. Well then why? I have no reason to help. I am not doing any charity work. The reason I joined hands with Susong Yunsong GM Ford CL and SSK was because it was beneficial to us. However, there is no benefit to the GH group if you help. Go Junhyung still looked like he didn't believe me. I said to convince him. Think about it. If private feelings remained in me, would the GH group have been okay until now? Go Junhyung's eyes widened at my words. I kept looking at that expression. If it's a Seosong group, it's easy if it's about the size of a GH group. After taking a tender offer of the holding company GH Holdings, and securing a friendly stake, the chairman and president of the holding company can all be expelled. If I go out to eat, can you stop it? Go Junhyung, startled, shouted. GH Group is a company that our family has devoted their entire life to growing. So what? Taekyu also said something. Should the state and the people work together to help us pass on to our children and grandchildren? In Korea, there is a strong tendency to equate the head family with the company. However, the owners of the corporation are the shareholders who own the stock. Managers must do their best to maximize the interests of shareholders. If you don't do it right, you have to leave. In fact, in foreign countries, it is not uncommon for founders to be kicked out of the company. Still, in Korea, the head of the family with less than 10% of the stake at the most pretends to be the owner of the company. And the media, far from checking it, wraps it up as if it were the truth. Even if the head is arrested for embezzlement or breach of trust, the global business strategy is disrupted, and the national economy is collapsing. The reason that the chaebol system has been maintained in Korea is because it has its own rationality. The first generation of the Korean chaebol was an entrepreneur. Like today's startups, they built their businesses out of barren land. The second generation of chaebols helped the founder, the first generation, grow the company together. Many groups collapsed as the oil shock and foreign exchange crisis hit Korea, but the surviving companies grew into global companies. If Ilkwon Lim had not inherited the Seosung Group, would he have been able to develop Seosung Electronics into the world's #1 memory semiconductor company? If Han Min-gu hadn't been in charge of Unsung Motors, could Korea have become the automobile powerhouse it is today? The problem is 3- and 4-year-olds. They were brought up in a good environment from birth, and their management ability has not been tested at all. Nevertheless, he inherited the company as if it were natural. Foreign companies are not without cases of family succession of management rights, but they do not use all sorts of expedients to succeed in succession to a successor whose ability has not been verified, as in Korea. There is a joke like this that points out the succession problem of the chaebol. Im Jin-young is the son of Im Il-kwon. So what's the name of Bill Gates' son? As we all know, Bill Gates is the founder and CEO of Microsoft. He was once the richest man in the world and is still actively engaged in philanthropy. Surprisingly, few people know the name of Bill Gates' son. The reason is that after his father's death, Jin-young Lim took over the position of chairman of Susong Group, while Bill Gates retired at an appropriate time and passed his CEO position to Steve Ballmer. In fact, it doesn't matter whether you received succession or selected professional managers according to a reasonable procedure. Sony, Japan's largest electronics company, was devoured by professional managers. There are countless cases where professional managers have collapsed, as much as the case where the successor succeeded in bringing down the company. Whether it is a black cat or a white cat, as long as you can catch mice well, you will survive regardless of who manages the business, otherwise you will be expelled from the market. The late Junhyung lowered his head as if he was banging his head on the table. Please, Seo Kong Jinhu. If you help me this time, I will never forget your grace. Why the hell are you doing this to me? A long time ago, if something like this had happened, it might have been refreshing. There is no excitement right now. And will this help solve the problem? I sighed and said. In addition to the insolvency that has been revealed so far, it is said that there are additional insolvencies worth $300 million in overseas business sites. Hey, what are you talking about? He looked like he didn't know. You can't know a company's financial statements until you look through them one by one. If the place of business is located abroad, it is inevitably more difficult to understand the current situation. For example, a real estate held with assets of 10 billion won on the books may be sold for only 3 billion won. Bills or receivables that were not treated as a loss because they thought they could be received, of course, turned out to be default or junk bonds. As always, the fastest information is the financial sector. Foreign IBs, including Golden Gate, have already grasped the financial situation of GH Construction and set out to organize their relationship. You can hide it only when you are hugging it, but if you put it on the market for sale, you will be subject to various due diligence. In this way, the insolvency that has been hidden until now is revealed at once. Who should be held responsible for this? It is not a sin to be incompetent, but it is a sin to have an incompetent person taking his place. An incompetent CEO harms not only employees and shareholders, but also the national economy. Taekyu nodded his head as if he understood what I was saying. Right. That's why I don't become the CEO, so I don't sin. When President Ko Jin-kwang resigns, it is impossible for the late Jun Hyung to retain his position as well. Is it to save the company or to protect one's position? A chaebol that has lost its management rights is like a lost kite. There is no need to worry about re-employment, but it will be difficult to assume a key position within the group again. Ko Jin-kwang's brothers who occupy other subsidiaries won't sit still. 1L. I will say one more thing. Do you know that it is very rude to come and talk to me about personal feelings like this? Go Jun-hyung, who was about to say something, bowed his head. It wasn't long before he opened his mouth again. Sorry. There were a lot of misconceptions today. Please forget about it. I nodded. I can't help you, but I hope it goes well. It's probably not going to go well though. He got up from his seat and turned around. People have different perspectives depending on where they look. When I first met him at school, the person who looked big now seems small and shabby. After he left, Taekyu asked, "Are you really not going to help? You said no personal feelings remain." I thought he was just saying something. What the hell did you hear me say? If you still have feelings for Sienna, you would have helped GH Construction. Conversely, if there was a feeling of resentment, I would have used my hand earlier. But I have no intention of doing anything because it is neither. As I said before, how about eating GH Group? Wouldn't the shareholders welcome you with open arms if you said you were going to take over the management? I would. This is not because I am more just or better in person than the head of the family. Because that helps the stock price. There is neither good nor evil in money. I shook my head. Done. What should I eat? There is no benefit in eating it. It is highly likely that you will end up just spending money. Selling construction will improve the group's financial structure, but it will not be enough to revive the declining trend. The two axes of the GH Group are oil refining and construction. Although GH Oil remains, the decline in sales is obvious due to the economic slowdown and the increase in the supply of electric vehicles. The shrinking market itself is also a problem, but the domestic market share is also declining due to the offensive of SSK Innovation and A-Oil. If nothing had changed, there would have been no problems. Then I would have continued to do what I was doing, and I would have been able to maintain my current position. However, in a rapidly changing environment, managers made the wrong decision, and the situation has come to this point. Even if the business conditions are bad, there are plenty of opportunities if you look for them. But how much alternative management would have gone to the point of capital erosion of a normal company? Nevertheless, there is only one reason that has been able to hold the position until now. That's because he's a tycoon. If he had been a professional manager, he would have been cut off long ago. The self-driving electric car created by Keris is already changing the world. The VR sex device created by Facet has shaken the dating and marriage market beyond the adult industry. Vermorks will not only affect games but also people's lives, and the traveling wave reactor will change the flow of the energy industry. I said, muttering. Neither people nor businesses can live forever. If you read and adapt to change, you will survive. Otherwise you will die. The market has now accepted the sale of GHENC as an established fact. President Ko Jin-kwang flew to the Philippines to negotiate, but it was not easy to get the money since the local SPC went bankrupt. The reason things got so twisted was that he had the wrong contract in the first place. As concerns about capital erosion grew, the stock price reached its lower limit. Interested companies weighed in on acquisitions. I met Ellie at lunch. It is said to be a great disaster, but even such a large company is overtaken. Seeing this, I think it's true that the strong are the ones who survive, not the strong survive. It's survival of the fittest. It's often used when explaining the theory of evolution, but did you know that Charles Darwin never said that? Okay. Wasn't this what Darwin said? While we were talking, a call came from an unknown number. I knew intuitively who it was. After contemplating whether or not I should take it, Ellie said. It's okay, so take it. Read more at wuxiax.com. I see. I pressed the call button. Hello. After a while, a voice came out. Hi. It's me. As expected. The moment I heard your voice, I remembered things from the past. Our dating period wasn't very long, but even thinking about it now, it was fun and happy moments. What's up? If time permits, can we meet? The last time we met was before she married her. Her first love is now married to another man and has become a mother of her children. It's common for everyone. I know what she's talking about. And she'll know what I'm going to answer. Even so, I contacted him this way probably because he couldn't give up his hopes. I just cut it off and refused. No. I don't think I can because I'm busy these days. The answer came a while later. Okay. I said sincerely. I'm fine. You too. When I hung up, Ellie asked. Is it really okay if we don't meet? It would be better for Sienna that way. Ellie looked at me and smiled. You know what? What? Jinhoo is so sweet and I like that. Ah, thank you. I felt embarrassed, so I scratched my cheek for nothing. Ellie clapped her hands. Now what shall we go to for lunch? U.S. President Ronald Stamper has decided to visit Korea for 2 days for the Korea-U.S. summit. He will meet with President Ha Chong-min to discuss various issues such as the economy, U.S. forces in Korea, and North Korea's nuclear program. Unusually, meetings with game companies are also included in the schedule. To a reporter's question about this, Ronald replied, there are many outstanding game companies in Korea. The United States is ready to provide a number of aids for these businesses. When the President of the United States announced his intention to attract Korean game companies to the United States, the government was again criticized. Minister Shin Jeonmi ate up the entire game industry. Really great. Respectful. Take it off. I ate Korean games well. Hyo Chong-min, who was appointed by Shin Jeonmi, put your head down and reflect. The game regulation bill was also proposed by lawmakers from the Liberal National Party. What are you talking about? I am a supporter of Chong-min Hyo, but it is true that the New Politics Party was more at fault. It's better to go to America than to fight the leisure club in Hell Joseon. By the way, Ronald said that he met Jin-Hoo Kong as soon as he arrived. Huh. So what about the president? Gang Jin-Hoo takes precedence over the president. The president changes every 5 years, but after the earthquake the money will gradually increase. After big one, aren't you almost comrades? You also received the Nobel Peace Prize. President Ronald arrived in South Korea the day before the summit. I got in the car and headed to his hotel. Like last time, he stayed at the American hotel chain Grand Paras Hotel in Namsan. Ronald looked at me and hugged me happily. Nice to see you again. It was my first time seeing you in Norway at the end of last year. How have you been? It's a reunion after a few months. If you think about it, it must be a great privilege to be able to meet the President of the United States so often. Ronald sat down on the sofa with a tired expression on his face. Your body isn't what it used to be. When I was young, I couldn't stay awake for several nights. Even if the president of the world's most powerful country seems to be unable to do anything about his age. Ronald smiled bitterly at my words. You're young, so I don't know yet, but you'll find out later. No matter how much money you have, you cannot avoid getting older. I definitely don't know yet. We sat face to face and talked about what had happened. How is your relationship with the Korean government? They seem to be running into various problems recently. Neither good nor bad. I heard that the president of Korea is away from you? Well, it's 100 times better than being close. Power and money are inseparable. Keeping some distance is good for each other. Korea has grown into a state-led, planned economy, which has created a chronic problem of economic and political cohesion. It was not uncommon for a company to hand over an apple box full of 10,000 won to politicians as a holiday gift. There were even cases where the truck was loaded with cash boxes and then the keys were handed over. So-called tea. Even in the past, it is a shame that something similar is happening in the 21st century. Well, it's a lot better now than it used to be. Aren't you planning to go into politics? There is not. Ronald grinned. If someone who said he doesn't do politics sees later, he must be running for office somewhere. I laughed too. It may not be. I'm only in my 20s now. Even if you have no intention of going into politics right now, you never know how your thinking will change when you get older. As you may be aware, there are growing voices in the United States that we need to check the OTK company. The reason is that OTK company is dominating the automobile market with autonomous driving and batteries as weapons. Experts feared that OTK company would dominate the mobility market through Keras, just as Microsoft dominated computer OS, Google dominated internet searches, AMZ dominated online commerce, and FaceNote dominated social media. Although it has not affected the entire market so far, the monopoly controversy will grow as the spread of autonomous electric vehicles increases. The reason why the politicians don't even come up with words is because you are the hero who saved America from the big one. Carlos is also working with GM and Ford. But the press keeps pointing out that you have too much money. Strictly speaking, I don't have the money. It's just that people are valuing the value of the shares I own. Even so, it is true that the valuation is too high. Even compared to the second richest man, AMZ CEO Jake Byron, it is more than 8 times the difference. I have in my hands a wealth that no one in the history of mankind has ever had. Ronald said in a passing tone. Do you have any plans to become naturalized in the United States? Actually, I hadn't thought of that. After all, I'm still being scorned for being a black-haired American. Let's think about it. President Ronald left for Japan after 2 days in Korea. Unlike China, which was defeated in a trade war with the United States, Japan was currently in the process of being defeated. Although Prime Minister Okazaki barely managed to regain power, his power base has been significantly weakened compared to his predecessor. Ronald plans to press Japan as hard as possible to obtain as many concessions as possible. It will be a headache for Prime Minister Okazaki, who already suffers from criticism even within the conceded party. He is playing because he has no work to do, and Taekyu looked out the window and said, "Isn't this a bit harsh?" "Not a little, but a lot." On a clear day, the view of Gangnam area catches your eye. But now the road was not clearly visible due to the hazy dust. It was as if the entire building had been submerged in mist. Cars had their headlights on even in broad daylight. All the employees wore masks to work, and the air purifiers were running all over the building. Made in China, fine dust is coming in every day. What should I say to China? I did, but the seeds didn't work. China hardened its flippers, saying it was not their fault for fine dust. Nevertheless, when South Korea offered a joint investigation, it was rejected. However, even if the investigation reveals that China is to blame, there is no way to solve it. And surprisingly, China has been making efforts on its own. If Korea is suffering so much from fine dust from China, what would the situation be in China? If the water or food is contaminated, you can buy it separately, but the air cannot. In short, the rich, the high-ranking Communist Party, and the common people all must breathe the same air. As such, when it comes to environmental issues, the Communist Party is fighting for its life and death. You can increase eco-friendly energy. Aren't you doing it? It seems that China has little interest in green energy, but this is a big mistake. The Chinese government has poured massive subsidies in the past decade, increasing the proportion of renewable energy. Related companies came up one after another, and solar panels were installed in deserts and wind generators in mountain ranges like grass. However, no matter how much renewable energy is increased, China will not be able to meet the power generation it needs. China has a fundamental problem with its energy structure. In modern society, energy is the foundation of the nation. For this reason, great powers have been focusing on securing energy. Since Russia is rich in oil and natural gas, energy has not been a concern for a long time. Until the shale revolution, the United States tried to secure oil in the Middle East stably, but after the shale revolution, it has been reborn as a country that goes beyond energy self-sufficiency and exports. However, China still relies on imports for most of its energy. In order to increase the energy self-sufficiency rate, the company started oil and gas mining by increasing exploration and drilling in the nearby waters. And although some results were achieved, it is not enough compared to the increase in consumption. The most abundant energy resource is coal. So they built a bunch of coal-fired power plants, turned their factories to coal, and even used coal to heat their homes. The result is fine dust that fills the sky. However, power plants and factories cannot be stopped. So the conclusion was ultimately nuclear power. Currently, 15 nuclear power plants are under construction in China, and 40 more are expected to be built in the future. However, most of these nuclear power plants are located on the eastern coast. It is even being built on the Shandong Peninsula, which is almost attached to Korea. Why are you building it there? It is natural for a nuclear power plant to be built on the beach where it is easy to obtain coolant for cooling the reactor. And in China, as coastal cities have developed, industrial complexes are clustered around them. The closer the nuclear power plant and the industrial complex are, the better. In the case of Korea, it is the same logic as steel mills and shipyards that consume large amounts of electricity are clustered near nuclear power plants. Then when we buy, don't we die together? Could there be an accident? Nuclear plants are also made in China. Made in China is fine these days. And unless you go crazy, you won't build a nuclear power plant roughly. Nuclear power plants cause astronomical damage once an accident occurs. If you look at the case of the Fukushima nuclear accident, Japan would have endured that much, otherwise the economy would have collapsed. If a nuclear power plant in China explodes, causing damage to Korea, mainland China will become a radioactive hell. There have been only 3 nuclear accidents in the world in decades. And by taking lessons from these accidents, safety was further strengthened. Taeyong tilted his head. But if you say it the other way around, accidents do happen. Well, yes. What if an accident happens anyway? China suffers the damage because it is their own fault, but Korea suffers the damage even though it has done nothing wrong. But we can't stop building nuclear power plants. If you say that you build a coal-fired power plant instead of a nuclear power plant, is it even more problematic? If China turns on a thermal power plant, they die from breathing fine dust. And if they turn on a nuclear power plant, they die together in an accident. Answer. It's like having a troubled neighbor next to you. However, it is difficult to say strongly diplomatically, as China is Korea's largest exporter. As the economy is highly dependent on trade, even trade retaliation will cause serious damage. While apart from that, it doesn't mean that the government is doing well in diplomacy. Diplomatic power is closely related to national power. It would be great if there were no other countries to look out for because of its strong economic and military power, but the reality is not so. Although Korea is at a disadvantage in diplomacy with great powers, if you think about it, there has never been a time when there were no great powers around since Gojoseon. So, even in the given environment, we must bring out the best results. Read more at wuxiax.com. Taeyong nodded and said, "By the way, isn't it half because of you that Korea has a bad relationship with China and Japan right now?" That's a very good point. In China, after the Zhou Tea incident, and in Japan after the Nishida Securities incident, anti-Korean sentiment has risen dramatically. Even now, the far-right politicians of both countries put blood on their foreheads and swear at me whenever they hear me. In the Wonga timeline, you are compared to Meng Tigri. Which of the 4 do you like the most? I hate them all. Even so, isn't it a bit of a messy scoundrel? After OTK company invested in Rosatom, the plan to develop a progressive wave reactor proceeded smoothly. No matter how difficult the Russian economy was, if he put his mind to it, he could afford to pay for the experiment. Nevertheless, the reason the experiment was stopped was because of skepticism about the possibility of success. In fact, Russia's nuclear power technology was evaluated to be 3 years behind that of the United States. However, the situation changed after Kang Jin-hu came out. Aside from his $1 billion in money, his investment meant that he had a great chance of success. Both the Russian government and Rosatom did their best to support and cooperate with the experiment. Even Professor Petrov, the head of the experiment, was surprised by the sudden change of attitude. The world's attention was drawn to the experiment to be carried out at the 500 MW nuclear reactor built near Kursk. The experiment started with all preparations to cool the reactor in case of emergency. While everyone held their breath, Professor Petrov pressed the button. First, a small amount of enriched uranium-235U caused a nuclear reaction. Depleted uranium-238U was then burned, and liquid metal sodium absorbed the heat and converted it into electrical energy. There is nothing wrong with the reaction's speed. No more than coolant temperature. No more than the radioactivity level. The feared accident did not occur. After seeing the fuel rod burning slowly like a lit cigar, the officials all cheered and applauded. At that time, Professor Petrov breathed a sigh of relief, and the researchers who had worked together for a long time embraced each other with joy. Although there are still obstacles to go through before commercialization, it has been confirmed that TWR, which has only existed in theory, can be implemented in reality. The news immediately reached the Kremlin in Moscow. President Vysotsky held a press conference and made the announcement to the press. The progressing wave reactor experiment conducted by Professor Petrov's team was a success. The Russian government will spare no effort in helping to commercialize this technology. This is a victory for Russian technology and a victory for the Russian people. Russia has now become the world's most powerful nuclear power plant. Nuclear material that once threatened mankind will now be used for human prosperity. We gathered in the Golden Gate governor's office to watch President Vysotsky's announcement. Newspapers around the world rushed to publish articles. Breaking news: Professor Petrov's team succeeds in conducting wave reactor experiment. Is the era of safe nuclear power ushering? What is the future of the energy industry drawn by OTK company? What is Korea's plan to phase out nuclear power? Korea Nuclear Power Plant, which is lagging behind in technology, concerns about export disruption growing. Saudi nuclear power plant officials contacted Rosatom, exporting nuclear power plants to Korea in progress. Greenpeace emergency statement. There is no such thing as a safe nuclear power plant. Taekyu stuck out his tongue even though he knew he had been contacted beforehand. It's very fast. What speed fight? If the experiment had been conducted in Korea, it would have taken several years to select a site for the nuclear reactor test and to collect opinions from residents. Even considering the fact that the foundation work has been completed, this is beyond imagination. Hyunju Nuna said while drinking coffee. That means Russia was in a hurry. Europe is also actively engaged in the construction of nuclear power plants. From the Russian perspective, since they have the TWR key after the natural gas pipe, they can use the economic sanctions as full leverage. Ellie let out her sigh. Because of Jinhu, only us will be busy again. Again, the financial markets responded immediately. While oil and natural gas prices have plummeted, stock prices of related companies soared as nuclear power plant construction is expected to increase. Although there are still difficulties before commercialization, it has become clear that TWR will become the mainstream for nuclear power plants in the future. Hyunju Nuna looked at me through her glasses. Did you expect it to be like this? Of course. I invested because I expected it to do well. When I first heard about it, I was worried if I was investing as I wanted. I was kind of worried too. Taeyong nodded his head. Then there is no need to worry about Jinfu. If there are 100 investors, there are 100 ways to invest. Some trust financial statements, some trust people and invest. Some make decisions by thorough analysis, others by sense. Japan's most famous investor, Softbox chairman Masayoshi Son, is famous for making investment decisions in a short time. He made the decision to invest $20 million right away while having a meal with Ma Won, CEO of Alizini. According to Masayoshi Son later, it took less than 30 minutes to make an investment decision, and the rest was time to eat. The result, as everyone knows, is a jackpot beyond imagination. No matter how you invest, the results are good. The US-China trade war that shook the world ended in a complete defeat for China. China accepts most of the US's requirements and has agreed to loosen restrictions and reduce its trade deficit. China has had countless precedents of trade retaliation against countries that disobeyed its interests, but it was helpless when faced with the same by the United States. Surprisingly, it all started after Kang Jinhu. He revealed that Zhou Cha had used a spy chip to steal CARE's self-driving technology, and the entire United States was shocked. When it comes to the cause, it was clearly China's responsibility, and when China, which was initially evasive, was pushed into a corner, eventually admitted that the allegations raised by Kang Jinhu were true, and apologized and compensated. China grinded its teeth. but it was unable to afford trade retaliation against South Korea to settle a trade dispute with the United States. However, despite the official announcement, the Chinese media had a completely different opinion. Zhou Cha said that although he never copied Keris's technique, he was forced to admit it under pressure from the US. And many Chinese believed it. Chinese consumers sporadically boycotted Korean products, and the state-run media poured out criticisms of Kang Jin-hu whenever they had a chance. Criticisms of Kang Jin-hu whenever they had a chance. What adverse effects did financial speculator Jin-hu Kang have on the global economy? OTK Company is a hotbed of illegality and tax evasion. A speculator with America on his back. Contemplation after Kang Jin-ho is like Mangtigjui. In the midst of these accusations, President Vysotsky's announcement was made. Then the atmosphere changed subtly. A key part of China's recent energy policy is to increase the number of nuclear power plants. In fact, it was making a huge investment in nuclear power technology for this purpose. Originally, Chinese nuclear power companies were planning to conduct joint experiments in China in cooperation with US megapower, but this was cancelled due to a trade dispute. In addition, the United States banned the export of experimental equipment, technology transfer, and acquisition of American companies. China, whose hands and feet are tied, has no choice but to step in the direction of strengthening nuclear cooperation with Russia. However, Professor Petrov's research team, which was funded by OTK Company, succeeded in the world's first TWR experiment. Until just a few days ago, the state-run media, which had harshly criticized Kang Jin-hu, suddenly poured out articles to the contrary. 21st century Zhuge Liang succeeded in TWR investment. An amazing investor with the same insight as Zhang Liang. Jin-hu Kang, if you know about it, he is a descendant of Miangji of the Zhou dynasty and the progenitor of the Qi dynasty Kang Taegong. In China after the earthquake, the same investor should come out. Korean netizens who saw the article reacted absurdly. Hey, after Gangjin I upgraded from Mangtigjui to Zhuge Liang. Why is Taegong Kang here? Mr. Kang, do you just stick with it? That's true. I am Jin-hu Kang and I am the Jinju Kang clan and I have Taegong Kang as my ancestor. They suddenly changed their attitude because they were in a pitiful situation. Haha, the true press of the continent. Seeing something like this, Jin-hu Kang is really amazing. The OTK Company paid for the TWR experiment. To be honest, Chinese nuclear power plants are meaningless except for cheap ones. Efficiency also decreases. Glad it didn't explode. Does China want to cooperate with Russia to commercialize TWR? What is Korea doing? Do not talk to me. I'm busy denuclearization. I first spoke to Professor Petrov. Congratulations. Professor Petrov said with a smile. So far the theory has only been verified. From now on it's real. We plan to proceed with the next step immediately in cooperation with those involved in Rosatom. Even with this, it can be said that half of the hurdles have already been crossed at the time the experiment is successful. If the traveling wave reactor called the Dream Reactor is commercialized, the global nuclear market will be booming in the future. Then I had a video call with President Vysotsky. Seeing her with a smile on her face, she looks pretty good. Seriously, after groaning from Western sanctions for a while, the opportunity for a reversal was prepared. Near the end of the conversation, President Vysotsky brought up another story. Last year, China's Li Huning resigned, did you know? I think I heard it. The Politburo Standing Committee has 7 members, including President Zhang Pinghua. These are the leaders who lead the huge continent called China. The superficial reason was ill health. But I heard recently that there was another reason. I'm saying it's not a big deal, but when it comes to China's key politicians it's not common. Who would you have heard of? Have you heard from the KGB? In any country, various information is collected through intelligence agencies. As everyone knows, he is from the Russian intelligence agency, the KGB. It is known that important information is reported directly to the KGB director. It has nothing to do with you. Would you like to hear it? With me. President Vysotsky started talking, and after a while my face hardened more and more. After the conversation was over, I didn't say anything for a long time. President Vysotsky burst into laughter. Haha, don't make such a scary face. He tried to fix his expression, but it wasn't as easy as he thought. There was a slight convulsion in the corner of his mouth. I don't even know what kind of expression I'm making right now. I feel like I have to tell you. I hope it helps. Thank you. Does this mean you owe a debt? An invitation was sent from Beijing. The Chinese government is inviting Korean businessmen to promote economic cooperation between the two countries. Not only OTK Company, but also Seosong Yunsong and CL received invitations. Take you asked. Are you going? Go. Everyone is going with Chairman Im Jin-yong. Even though China's economic growth rate has fallen, it is still overwhelming compared to other countries. Due to the US-China dispute, regulations have been relaxed, and as China is actively attracting foreign companies, global companies are increasing their investment in China. After the Zhou incident, relations between Korea and China cooled, which led to damage to Korean companies. The government will also feel a great burden. This isn't my fault, but I can't say it's unrelated. This time I will go eat and shake hands with President Zhang Pinghua, and then the mood will be a little better. If you go to China, aren't you going to get caught by the police and die? Are you going to have to go out anyway? Isn't China a country where anything is possible? Still, there is a tradition that the reaper does not kill. Being invited by the government means taking full responsibility for security and safety. Something happens to me, America will not stand still. Well, it's not that we're going to go there for the country and the people, aren't we supposed to go to China later? The technology that Carlos possessed did not suddenly fall from the sky one day. In 2 or 3 years, Chinese companies will follow suit to where they are now. As we have a huge domestic market, it will be easy to collect data. The 3 largest single economies in the world are the United States, Europe and China. After dominating the US market, it has to expand to exports, but Europe is currently struggling to grow by 1%. On the other hand, China continues to grow by more than 6% despite a number of adverse factors. Therefore, no company can give up on the huge market of China. China would also like to cooperate with the OTK company in various fields, including TWR. So, I must have invited me to resolve the relationship. The presidents either boarded their own private planes, or left first class and flew to Beijing. I left the company with Take-You and headed to Beijing on a private plane. Afraid to unpack the luggage at the hotel, Commerce Manager Li Sui came with an interpreter. He said, holding my hand with both hands, "Welcome, Mr. Kong. I should have been to Beijing once before, but now I have the opportunity. Nice to see you again here." It was like meeting a close friend after a long time. Even though something like this has happened before, it doesn't look like he's bothered at all. This is the first time since last time. Li Sui, Director of Commerce, smiled broadly. Haha, though, because of that, Mr. Kong and I have formed such a relationship, isn't that a good thing? The Zhou T side also apologized and paid compensation, and Mr. Kong accepted it, so I hope you will forget about the past. Whoever heard it said that the Chinese government had nothing to do with it. If you have time, how about having a cup of tea together? Now. Yes. Actually, there are people who want to meet Professor Kong. Even if you look at my face, I beg you. It will not take a long time. Judging by the look on his face, I don't think he should refuse. I nodded. Okay. We moved in the prepared car. The small tea house was completely empty and a man was seated first. A face you know, probably everyone in the world knows his face except me. After hearing Li Sui's tone, I was afraid, but my prediction was correct. He got up and held out his hand. Nice to meet you. See you here again. Long time no see. His eyes were comfortable with a warm impression like the man next door, but he felt a natural sense of intimidation. After all, it is only natural that he is the leader of the 1.4 billion people. Director Li Sui left his seat and the interpreter who came with him remained. After we said our goodbyes and sat down, a staff member came and poured our tea. President Zhang Pinghua said, raising the teacup. This is Hoki tea made in Taiping Prefecture. I hope it suits your taste. Thank you, I will drink. I drank it slowly and tasted it. It's probably expensive tea, but I don't know if it's worth drinking. Have you been to Beijing? I went on a trip with a friend in the past. The air is a lot better than it was back then. The reason is that the factory in Beijing has been moved to the outskirts. As a result, the air in Beijing improved, but the surrounding area was covered with fine dust instead. The problem is that the dust blows to the Korean peninsula only when the wind blows. After a moment's hesitation, I opened my mouth. Can I ask you an excused question? First of all, I'm curious to know what kind of question you're going to ask. Zhang Pinghua nodded his head and I opened my mouth. At the time, Karis was in the middle of a dispute with Zhou Cha, There was talk of arresting a Hong Konger, is that true? For a brief moment, a startling light flashed from his eyes. But then he spoke calmly. There are no Hong Kongers. There are only Chinese people who are all the same. Then they call me Hong Kong resident. Who is that Hong Kong resident talking about? I put down the teacup and said, he's Eli Kim's father. The Qing dynasty handed Hong Kong over to Britain in the Treaty of Nanjing, signed after its defeat in the Opium War, and Hong Kong returned to China's arms after 99 years. China agreed to one country, two systems, guaranteeing autonomy in return for Hong Kong. As a result, Hong Kong also holds elections separately, and the currency is Hong Kong dollars, not yuan. They also exercise judicial power on their own, not according to the Chinese constitution. However, as China's power grew, its influence over Hong Kong grew, and in recent years, it has become common for Chinese police to arrest people and take them to the mainland without the permission of the Hong Kong authorities. Ellie was born to a Hong Kong father and an English mother. Her father, Eli's father, runs business between Hong Kong and Europe. Compared to Eli's mother, who is British, or Ellie, who has dual citizenship and lives in Korea, it will be difficult for a Hong Kong father to escape the influence of the Chinese government. When I heard this from President Vysotsky, my first thought was that I was too easy. He had taken everything too easy during that time. Because of me, the people around me could be at risk. What expression am I making now? Are you terrified or distorted by anger? After a while, President Zhang Pinghua opened his mouth. Someone said that, she said. What crime did you say you should be arrested for? I am a drug addict. I was terribly surprised, but I asked calmly without showing any expression. Did Ellie's father do drugs? He said it didn't matter. Are you trying to arrest me as a drug offender even though I'm not a drug offender? China suffered severe damage from opium at the end of the Qing dynasty, and has a painful history of being defeated in the Opium War. That is why drugs are considered a felony. Possession or distribution of drugs in excess of a certain amount is punishable by death. Foreigners were no exception to this, and several Koreans were also executed. Despite strong protests in the country, China never backed down when it came to drug issues. If arrested as a drug addict, he would never have been released easily. Fortunately, this didn't actually happen. Ellie's parents are still doing well in Hong Kong. President Zhang Pinghua looked at my expression and said, I think that method would have been effective enough. There are people in the world who give up even those around them for a purpose, while others want to protect those around them even if they give up everything. If the Chinese government had taken Eli's father hostage and used it as a negotiating card, what would I have done? Perhaps he apologized for making a groundless accusation against Zhou Cha and stepped down. So the question arises here. If you knew it was an effective method, why didn't you do it? Zhang Pinghua put down his finished teacup. According to the old saying, dragons can be tamed and ridden by humans. But under the dragon's neck there are scales that are upside down, and it is said that if you touch the scales, the dragon will surely kill that person. It's disgusting. This is what Han Bija said. There is something called rebellion even in humans. If you touch it, one of them must die. I nodded. He would have conceded the Zhou Cha case to save Eli's father, but after that he would have attacked China by all means and methods and made the issue public. Even if I suffered losses in the process, I would not have stopped, and as a result China may have suffered more than the US-China trade dispute. I will ask you one last question. Does Li Huning's resignation have anything to do with that? President Zhang Pinghua smiled faintly. I do not know. But if you can't understand your opponent and say such stupid things, you don't deserve to sit on the standing committee. It was a de facto affirmation. The official reason for Li Huning's resignation was his ill health, and experts analyzed that he, from Shanghai, was pushed back by a power struggle. But the truth is it because he said it? A horse is heavier than 1,000 gold. It will never happen again. It's not because it's morally wrong or unfair. It's just that you won't touch my wrath. President Zhang Pinghua looked straight at me and said, even if we used to aim at each other's necks with a knife, I think we can become friends as long as we agree. I think that the path that CEO Kong Jin who wants to walk and the path that China has to take are not different. I remembered Li Sui's manager's words and attitude toward me. As I felt it, it wasn't a pretense, it was the truth. As long as my skills and capital are helpful, China will continue to be favorable to me. A cat that catches mice is a good cat. Should this be called Chinese pragmatism or the continental climate? China and OTK company will be of great help to each other. I hope that today's meeting will be the beginning of that. President Zhang Pinghua, Korea is an important economic partner of China. China and Korea historically have a long-standing friendship. Support for Korean companies to invest in China. Seeking Sino-Korea cooperation to revitalize the three northeast provinces. Chinese media sent out photos and videos of President Jiang Pinghua shaking hands and talking with each other every day, emphasizing the importance of economic cooperation between Korea and China. President Jiang Pinghua said at a press conference, China will allow more foreign equity ownership and independent management. We will strengthen the protection of intellectual property rights and take strict measures against infringements. We will gradually abolish tariffs, maintain an open policy, and continue to open the door to the Chinese market. The next day, a meeting was held with Korean businessmen presided over by Prime Minister Bo Xiaoyu. This is a forum created to hear honest opinions. If you have any difficulties in conducting business in China, please tell us frankly. It was as if the division commander had gathered the privates and told them to tell them if there were any difficulties in military life, so no one spoke easily. Reluctantly, I decided to carry the gun. It may be harsh or not very pleasant to hear, but can I say something? Prime Minister Bo Xiaoyu responded immediately. Of course. I don't care if it's harsh or something that pierces your heart, so please speak up. The Chinese government says it will expand investment in foreign companies, but in practice, local governments do not grant licenses or apply various kinds of censorship or regulations strongly. I would like the authorities to take a stronger step in resolving these issues. Prime Minister Bo Xiaoyu nodded with a serious expression. You said that it might be annoying, but it was something that touched my heart. I think what you just said is an honest talk about the problem, not a resentment. We need that talk now and we want to hear more from you. Next, Chairman Im Jin-yong and Chairman Han Chan-young spoke in turn, and other businessmen also expressed their difficulties. The Chinese government will continue to give everyone a chance to speak and listen seriously. And I will do my best to cooperate with you so that the difficulties you mentioned today can be resolved as soon as possible. Chairman Im Jin-yong, who was sitting next to me, spoke to me in a low voice. The sanctions have continued even if it is not explicit, but now it will be lifted. Fortunately, the Samsung Electronics didn't take any damage anyway, did it? Neither is it. Semiconductors and batteries were mostly B2B anyway, so there was no problem, but smartphones, TVs and refrigerators didn't sell well. From now on we have to sell hard again. Other businessmen also seemed to sigh. Russia promoted the success of the TWR test day after day, and President Vysotsky began a tour of Europe. The general view was that the goal was to sell nuclear power plants. China has announced that it will cooperate with Russia to commercialize the TWR. The Korean government, which had been focusing on exporting nuclear power plants, was in an even more difficult situation. Orders for nuclear power plants in the Czech Republic have already crossed the water, and there are rumors that other countries such as Saudi Arabia will have a hard time as well. In fact, concerns have grown that Korea may have been withdrawn from the global nuclear power plant market. Several countries rushed to contact Rosatom, but KNP officials kept their distance while keeping an eye on the government. The government is in trouble. It received strong support even when it first created and announced a roadmap to phase out nuclear power. As it was not long after the Fukushima nuclear accident, the whole world started to phase out nuclear power, and it seemed that the era of renewable energy would open at any moment. The problem is that while the amount of electricity required has increased significantly compared to when the plan was made, the expansion of the proportion of renewable energy has been slow. Despite efforts so far, the share of renewable energy in Korea was less than 10%. On the other hand, dependence on nuclear power is absolute. According to the Energy Master Plan initially announced by the government, it would raise it to the OECD average of 30%, but many experts questioned its feasibility. Under this circumstance, the emergence of TWR was nothing short of shaking up the government's Energy Master Plan. The government pointed out that nuclear power plants have high external costs as they phased out nuclear power plants. However, TWR uses depleted uranium as a raw material, and once it starts operation it can be used for more than 50 years, and it burns fuel rods completely, leaving almost no nuclear waste. Fuel cost, operating cost, closing cost, waste treatment cost, etc. will be drastically reduced. Experts have claimed that TWRs are at least 50 times more efficient than light water reactors. According to an opinion poll conducted not long ago, support for the nuclear phase-out policy was lower than that of the ruling party. This meant that many of the ruling party supporters were against it. The opposition Liberty Kuomintang continued to attack on the nuclear phase-out controversy, and even within the New Politics Party, opinions were divided. As it is the president's core promise, there was a difference of opinion between those who wanted to just carry out the policy and those who wanted to re-examine the policy from the beginning. In a chaotic situation in the political arena, there was an incident that stirred public opinion. A Chaebol family assaulted a caddy on a golf course. The alleged victim was Kim Se-yeon, wife of Park Min-woo, president of Yuan Express. The reason for the assault was that the car was scratched while the caddy was loading the golf bag into the car. The assault and verbal abuse continued for 20 minutes. Several other Chaebol wives were also present, but no one stopped them and stood by. The caddy was admitted to the hospital with injuries and trauma for 8 weeks, but the golf course did not report or protest the perpetrator, but instead fired the victim. The incident, which was almost overlooked, was reported to the internet and the media by his colleague caddy. The incident was captured on CCTV in the parking lot obtained by the police. The people were outraged by the Chaebol's case of a Chaebol, which if you forget it. However, there's one more thing to say about this. Jinhoo Kang's mother also belongs to this golf club. We weren't together on the day of the incident, but that doesn't matter. Representative Myung Jin-wook came to the National Assembly and waved his materials and shouted, "Does it make sense that the mother of the world's richest man with her son's money, carries a luxury bag, uses a 5-star hotel-like home and plays golf with the wives of a conglomerate?" In addition to this, on his last birthday he received Chanel bags, shoes, jackets, etc. from various wives of Chaebol families. The total gift amount alone is over $50,000. This is a bribe, not a gift. We must immediately investigate thoroughly, reveal the truth and apologize to the people. Read more at wuxiax.com. While we were having a meeting, Taekyu suddenly stood up and shouted, "Hey, it's a big deal." I waved my hand. "It's noisy, and if you're going to use your phone during a meeting, go out." "Oh no, that's a big deal. Look at the article." "Huh." Looking at his face, it seems like a really big deal. Did Lost Fantasy Online have an emergency update? I picked up the phone that Taekyu was handed over to me, and the others quickly took their cell phones out of their pockets. I was surprised to see the article title on the main portal site. What is this? Breaking news. After the earthquake, it is confirmed that her mother, Choi, received a Chanel bag from Kim Se-yeon in the golf course assault case. Mr. Choi, is it related to golf course abuse? Shocked to find out that he enjoyed a luxurious life in a 5-star hotel with his son's money. Having regular golf meetings with the hostesses of the Chaebol family, we need to investigate if there are more hidden cases of abuse. I stopped the meeting and called her mother. But no matter how many times I tried, I didn't get it. The moment I hung up because I was worried and tried to make a call to the hotel, the call was connected. "It's me, mother." Pyo Kong Jin-hoo. "Chief Lim Soo-mi?" The person who answered the phone was not her mother but Lim Soo-mi, the president. "Can you come right over here?" "Yes." "What happened?" President Lim Soo-mi shouted urgently. "Now your wife has passed away." As I was about to get in the car, someone ran in front of me. Ellie quickly opened her back door and climbed in. "Is your mother okay?" "It's not a big deal according to President Lim Soo-mi." "But how did you know?" Taejayu said. "I thought you were going crazy, so I called." Ellie told me. "Come on, let's go." I started the car. Self-driving or whatever, I stepped on it at full speed and ran to the Salon Hotel. Her mother was lying on a bed with a ringer in her hotel room and her boss, Soo-mi Lim, was with her. She looked at me and said, "The doctor said he collapsed from shock for a while and it shouldn't be a problem," she said. "Do not worry too much." President Soo-mi Lim went outside and I sat down next to the bed. "Are you okay?" Mother said as she wiped her eyes with her hand. "You must be busy with work, so why are you here? You always said why didn't you come?" Her mother's face was messed up with the marks of her tears. When she saw it, her chest seemed to choke. "Did you see the article?" "Yes, I saw it." Mother got her body up. She then poured out her words as if she was unfair. Her mother swears, it really has nothing to do with it. I found out later in the article that such a thing had happened. I know. It's a gift too. I got it because it wasn't expensive, but when she later heard the price she was shocked. So for her next birthday her mom gave her a similar gift. Really? I know. He's the kind of person who doesn't like to owe others. She's not the kind of person who doesn't like her mother a Chanel bag or a golf club. I didn't know Cian was such a person. How kind and sweet she was when she was with me. If I had known she was that kind of person, I wouldn't have met her in the first place. The assault scenes captured on CCTV have already been reported to the media. She looked like a crazy person to watch her swear at her caddy and slap her hands. But even such a person must have acted kinder than anyone in front of her mother. Her mother held my hand tightly and wept. She said, she became a mother and made her son curse. Now I won't play golf or anything. Just hit it. Did you say you were having fun these days? I'm going to quit now. I have to return all the gifts I received and I have to get out of here. I'm sorry, Jinhoo. I'm sorry, Mom. Don't do that. I didn't do anything wrong. What are you sorry for? No. It's all Mom's fault. Her mother, who was talking to her, burst out crying like a child as if her feelings were blessed. Crying face. I'm really sorry, Mom. I got nervous for nothing. Oh really? What are you crying about? My mother fell asleep because she was exhausted from crying, and I chatted with Seo Im Sumi outside. You are shocked to hear that your son has been abused because of you. It's not even a day or two that I'm cursed. President Lim Sumi smiled bitterly. But where is the parental mind? Her mother moved to the Salon Hotel because her relatives and people around her kept coming to her Dongtan house and bullying her. She originally planned to stay there until she moved and found her home, but she became friends with President Lim Sumi and her staff, and she ended up living here altogether. When it became known that Kang Jin-hoo was the mother of CEO Kang Jin-hoo, the wives of her Chaebol family naturally followed. Then she started playing golf together. She's all been trying to make friends with her. Do you know why? Yes. Still, when someone talked about business, he cut it off. I don't know anything about my son's work, and my son never listened to his mother in a long time. Laughter came out of its own accord. My mother would have said just that. President Lim Sumi bowed her head. I'm sorry, sir. It's my negligence. I should have known more about the people gathering around my wife. No. As long as I am the CEO of OTK company, people around my mother are bound to be entangled. Among them there are people like this and there are people like that. However, it is impossible to live without meeting people at all. Mother says she is going to leave the hotel right away, but please dry it out first. President Lim Sumi nodded his head. Don't worry about that. If my mother-in-law goes, I will be bored too. She decided to wait in another room until her mother woke up. Taekyu continued to look through the articles on his phone. Who is this Representative Myung Jin-wook who keeps getting mad? The guinea pigs were also very excited. Representative Myung Jin-wook continued to bite my mother in the National Assembly. Anyone who sees it would know that my mother abused her on the golf course. Although there are no legal or moral problems, the media diligently wrote down the words of Representative Myung Jin-wook and poured out articles that aroused anti-Chaebol sentiment. Kang Jin-hoo's mother, Mr. Choi, didn't really know about the golf course assault case. The perpetrator usually shows off his friendship with his mother after Kang Jin-ho. Culture among Chaebols. The public opinion that Kang Jin-hoo should apologize. Representative Jin-wook Myung, the National Assembly should hold a hearing. Secret meeting of the wives of the Chaebol family at the Salon Hotel. What really happened? As she remembered her mother crying, anger rose to the top of her head. In my heart I want to make a sound. Ellie looked at me and said, do you know what Jin-hoo looks like now? How are you? I've never seen him so angry. Ah. As I forced her to fix her expression, Ellie shook her head. It's okay. You can be more angry. What are you waiting for? Taejayu said. I've been doing it in moderation. So that's why these bastards are so mean. Aren't you supposed to take good care of it once in a while? Right. This is my fault. I have deliberately kept my distance from the politicians and the media. I thought that it was natural for politics and the media to check capital, and that view has not changed even now. But I can't tell the difference between what to do and what not to do. It's common sense not to do pad lip even when you're tall. If you do that, you'll want to open the skin. What are you going to do? I hope it won't go well this time too, will it? I said while looking at the photo of Representative Jinwook Myung in the article. No. You have to tell them what will happen if they touch someone else's family. The Ha Chong-min government decided to carry out a small reshuffle in the midst of taking power. In addition to the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family, which has already become vacant due to the sacking of Minister Shin Min-mi, it has decided to appoint new ministers from 5 ministries, including the Ministry of Small and Medium Venture Business and the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy, and the Civil Affairs Office started selecting candidates. Of these, the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy drew the most attention. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy is the department in charge of national energy policy, and it is also closely related to the issue of nuclear denuclearization, which continues to be a controversial issue. It should be said that the direction of the government's energy policy will be determined by who the next minister will be. As much as the public's attention was drawn to it, the liberal Kuomintang, which had reversed the direction of the previous government, said it would thoroughly verify it. In order to pass the hearings and demonstrate the president's will to move forward with the nuclear phase-out policy, the political circles expected that the ruling party's middle-class lawmaker would appoint the next minister, and again Representative Myung Jinwook was nominated. After not running in the last election, he was re-elected and returned to politics. He is also at Hyo Chong-min's presidential campaign and has been leading the nuclear-free policy. Because of his high awareness, he was included in the discussion of the new political party's next presidential candidate along with Seoul Mayor Won Sang-hoon. However, since the development of the TWR, the controversy over nuclear power generation has grown, and Assemblyman Myung Jinwook, who has been insisting on the removal of nuclear power and the expansion of renewable energy, has a difficult position. He, like most politicians, did not have a good feeling for Kang Jin-hoo. It is no exaggeration to say that the Korean economy is currently driven by the Kang Jin-hoo. It was even said that the most powerful person in Korea was Kang Jin-hoo, not the president. Despite such great influence, he moved freely without consulting the government. In China, the Zhou tea scandal broke out, and with Japan, the Nishida securities scandal broke out. As a result, diplomatic relations between China and Japan have cooled dramatically, and the government has had to work hard to come up with a solution. In the ruling party, there were complaints that the OTK company would take care of the profits and the government would take care of the rearrangement. In addition, the extremely sensitive issue of investment in nuclear power in Russia was pushed forward without a word to the government. In addition, Kang Jin-hoo's reputation was also a big burden. President Ronald sought after Kang Jin-hoo as soon as he visited Korea, and Korea-China relations immediately returned to thawing mode after Kang Jin-hoo met Jiang Pinghua stock and returned. The opposition parties, the media, the people, and the government are blaming the government for what it is. The assault on the golf course that occurred in this situation was a good issue to break the spirit of Jin-hoo Kang and escape from the controversy over nuclear power phase-out. Again, the people reacted very sensitively to the issue of the Chaebol family. Representative Myung Jinwook, who first raised the issue in the National Assembly, continued to shout while taking out his materials. According to the data obtained from the golf course, it was confirmed that her mother Choi and the perpetrator played golf together after a strong earthquake the day after the caddy assault case. The victim has lost her job and is suffering in the hospital, but she's been playing golf all by herself. Does this make sense? During your stay at the Ceylon Hotel, you need to thoroughly investigate whether you have properly paid for your hotel expenses and meals, whether you have abused your employees, and whether there is any return for the Chanel bag you received as a gift, and you must make it clear to the public. I think the National Assembly should hold a hearing on this case. Recurring Chaebol problems. Now it must be over. I held a press conference at the headquarters. Reporters from home and abroad flocked to the area. As I entered the conference room, the camera shutters exploded. Some broadcasters broadcast the press conference live. I stood in front of the podium and opened my mouth. Whether my mother stays in a hotel or plays golf, what does that have to do with the golf course assault? A reporter asked. Is it true that you received a Chanel bag as a gift from Se-yeon Kim? It is true. By the way, my mother is neither a journalist nor a politician, so what's wrong with getting her a gift? And the next month, on Kim Se-yeon's birthday, I gave her a pair of shoes and a wallet of the same brand, but I wrote the article without mentioning that fact. Do you think it is right in view of social norms to give and receive such expensive gifts, which are difficult for ordinary people to buy? I looked at the reporter and asked, then is it against common sense for men to gift Chanel bags to their girlfriends or wives? That. Please write more articles like that in the future. Questions from other reporters followed. Did your mother know about the golf course assault? Is it true that you and Kim Se-yeon were close? Did you receive any special request? I didn't answer them all. This is not a place for explanations. You have to do something wrong to explain it, and if you haven't done anything wrong, what should you explain? I held the press conference to make a presentation. At the word of the announcement, the reporters all paid attention to my mouth. As the press conference is being broadcast live, the whole nation is probably watching. Who said this? Even if you're tall, if you hit a pad lip, the string will come out. Representative Jin-wook Myung started it first, so I will come to the end with the determination to see the end. As of this time, we will be reporting corruption related to Representative Myung Jin-wook. The same is true with respect to Representative Jin-wook Myung's wife, children, parents, and other family members. Reporters were astonished. Representative Myung Jin-wook is a senior member of the New Politics Party and is even mentioned as a candidate for the next presidential election. But this is nothing like a declaration of war. I went on to say, if there is a moral problem, 10 million won; if there is a legal problem, 50 million won; if it is a criminal act that can be deprived of a member's office, it is 100 million won. And if it is a decisive cause enough to be arrested, 1 billion won as an information fee, I'll give it to you. Then we ask for a lot of information from the people.